Good morning, Yomit.
Hi, Mr. Patrick. How are you?
Very well. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, everything's fine.
Perfect. That's good. Thank you. How are you keeping?
Yes, everything is fine. I hope today's session will be very interesting. When I prepare it with Justin, I'm sure that this will be a very interesting topic.
Yeah, it'll certainly be interesting to get kind of different viewpoints and to hear how the vendors and others see this whole thing.
Yes.
And hopefully it'll be contentious. It'll be a good discussion, open discussion.
Yes, I hope.
Because I think this forum really, what you put together really is can really help, you know.
Yes, because I didn't attend before or sit in even a discussion before from a vendor and customer perspective because at some time when I sit with a vendor, I listen from them that there is a lot of problems they meet from the customer side, for example.
Yeah.
Not well prepared business requirement. The customer at certain time, especially maybe in our region, the customer only is seeking for a track and trace solution, but he didn't understand um, in correct way what is he needs. So because he didn't understand what he needs, he cannot provide the vendor with his real needs. So
Yeah.
once he receives the software or the hardware from the vendor, he discovers that this is not meets his requirements because he didn't know from the early time what is his real requirements.
Yeah, and I think it works, but that is very true. Honest, that is
Yes,
really true. But it also works both ways because I mean, the system you will install, the serialization system, is only a small. It's an important part, but it's a small part of the overall landscape. It's
yes,
not necessarily the system of record. It won't be the system of record for master data or for regulatory data, right?
yes,
You have all of those, and it's you have to understand the supply chain, you know,
yes, yes,
and
yes, yes,
you could have a great solution, but if it doesn't fit in your supply chain and work there, then it's of no use to anybody. So a lot of the work that goes on in the background is not.
yes,
These
yes,
solutions
yes,
are
yes.
a lot. There's a technical side, but the non-technical side is
Much.
probably more important, really. You know.
Yes. I think the word that you said it that the solution does not fit his supply chain. This is the most important point in choosing the vendor.
Yeah.
That he choose a vendor or the solution that fits to his supply chain, not just I need a track and trace solution.
Yeah.
This is a very very common needs. You
Yeah.
need the track and trace solution that fits to your supply chain.
Yeah. The other thing too is we need to distinguish between like a pharma company needing a solution versus a regulator needing a solution. You
Yes,
know,
yes,
because they're two very different things, and where because normally the regulators are interested in once it like comes into the country, like they want to know from that point on. Now
yes,
other regulation, Russia is slightly different, but I mean they have that kind of thing about them. So there's I think that distinction needs to be made clear too. That like what a regulator in some country may need is different. You know.
yes. So we have Mr. Jerome today and also
Mm.
Sebastian to have a different maybe a different take a different way regarding what is regulatory needs
Yeah.
from the vendors of the track and trace, and sometime at certain time we will have a discussion what also the customer needs from or what the manufacturer needs from the even the regulatory
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Mm.
implementing the track and trace. I think this is very interesting question. We will ask this question maybe in some time today in today's session because this is very important. What do you expect from the regulators? Awareness sessions, trainings, clear guidelines,
Mm.
early announcements, something like this, of course.
Yeah, I think from my experience of looking at it, Tatmin had done a very good job. Excellent.
Yes.
I mean,
For
in
me, yes. For
yeah,
me, it's a very good uh, designing, planning,
Yeah.
and implementation, as awareness, support. So yes, for me, this is this is a very good example to see how the level 5 or how the authority implement the track and trace in place.
And the thing that impressed me most was not necessarily the technical side, which is always good, of course, but they had weekly meetings
Yes,
where you
yes,
could join
yes.
and you could ask and they'd help you, and
This is
it
customer,
very that
yes,
side was
customer
excellent.
adherence, what we
Yeah,
call it. It's a
yeah,
customer adherence. Yes,
exactly. It was probably one of the best. Others
yes,
could learn from
yes,
that.
yes, yes. Okay. We will meet in just we will start in 5 minutes. I will start now the LinkedIn live to be ready in 5 minutes to start our meeting.
Good morning, Justin. How are you?
Good morning, Patrick. Good.
I just noted that I did it because
Hi, Justin. Hi, Mr. John. You are muted, Mr. Rizwan.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Yes. Hi, Patrick. Hi, Rizwan. Hi, Ahmed.
We have a very interesting discussion with Mr. Patrick before you join. So I think today's session will be very interesting.
That's right. That's right. I look forward to that.
Yep, it's expected. So it's a freestyle session.
Yes.
So, yes. Jerome not connected yet? No?
Not yet. I think we will start maybe in 2 or 3 minutes once Mr. Jerome and Mr. 𝐓𝐫𝐤𝐻 join us, then we can start.
I think Mr. Jerome is Twiglet21.
Okay. Yes, but I think you are muted, Mr. Jerome.
I am muted. I'll have to change that because that's on Google. Okay. There's what I can do with it. Oh, the different browser.
Okay, I think now we can start because Mr. 𝐓𝐫𝐤𝐻 is here. So all of us is here now. So good morning. I think this is thank you, of course, all for attending our today's webinar in our series of webinar, which is organized by TraceHub to try to raise awareness and face the expectations and the challenges in implementation of the track and trace. Of course, I'm very excited for this session because this session is we have today in our table different corners of the supply chain as we mentioned, and pharmaceutical supply chain. Different points of view on the same table. So we will see maybe an interesting discussions and different point of views, and of course addressing for many challenges that face the vendors and even the customer in the journey of the implementation of the supply chain. Our main focus today will be from the vendor and customer side. It's like a discussion between vendor and customer, okay, but we will take 2 points of view from regulatory or the country point of view, and also from the customer on the land and manufacturers and the wholesalers that maybe face also challenges in their journey of implementation of the track and trace. Okay. I think Mr. Jerome is out. Yes. Okay, let me introduce our guests today, our speakers today, till Mr. Jerome is joining us again. Okay, we have today Mr. 𝐓𝐫𝐸𝐻. Mr. 𝐓𝐫𝐸𝐻 is the head of governmental solution at Antares Vision Group. We have today Mr. Patrick. Mr. Patrick is the independent pharmaceutical sterilization and traceability consultant. We have today also Mr. 𝐓𝐫𝐸𝐻. Mr. 𝐓𝐫𝐸𝐻 is the founder and the CIO of PharmaTrax. We have also today the moderator with me is Justin. Justin is the client partner and principal consultant at 𝐓𝐫𝐚𝐜. Yes, Mr. Jerome here. Let me bend your voice. Yes, okay. Also, we have today Mr. Jerome. Mr. Jerome, he is a former general manager of SecureMed. SecureMed UK is a national verification organization in UK. I think we will have just 2 minutes introduction for the experience of each one. So let's start with Mr. Jerome. Can you please unmute yourself, Mr. Jerome, please?
Sorry, I thought I was unmuted. Anyway, good morning. My name is Jerome Burton. I'm the former general manager of SecureMed UK. SecureMed was the UK Medicines Verification Organisation. I established SecureMed in 2017 and operated the system until the beginning of 2025. The company doesn't exist anymore as it was closed down due to Brexit. I am very familiar with all the serialization and point-of-dispense verification requirements for the European Falsified Medicines Directive. I'm currently actually doing some consultancy work with 𝐓𝐫𝐸𝐻 to help them remove their reduce their alerts and exceptions within their system. The European Medicines Verification System it manages about 15 to 16 billion scans of medicines per year. There are about 110,000 pharmacies, there's 6,000 hospitals and 4,000 wholesalers, 2,500 manufacturers and 2,500 wholesalers, software providers in the system. So it's quite a big system. It runs across 27 countries. So I have quite a lot of experience in understanding and running and operating in the serialization and traceability environment.
Thank you, Mr. Jerome. It's an honor to have you today in our discussion. Thank you very much. Mr. 𝐓𝐫𝐸𝐻.
Yes, thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Pleasure of being on this panel, this hopefully very good and intense discussion today. I myself, Sebastian Neubert, I'm the head of government solutions at Antares Vision. I've been working in various stations in the pharmaceutical industry, medical device industry for the past many years. Today, I'm looking forward to provide some insights what it actually means to work from a vendor side with governments, both on the implementation and regulation side. And I'm looking forward to a good discussion with everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. 𝐓𝐫𝐸𝐻. Okay, Mr. Patrick, can you please introduce yourself?
Hi all. My name is Patrick. I've been in the serialization space for the last 13, 14 years or more. I'm more on the customer side, so I'll be that voice, not necessarily on the vendor side. Been obviously dealing with many different vendors, integrating to many national systems. So it'll be interesting to see the other viewpoints and maybe challenge them, and hopefully at the end of the discussion we'll still all be best friends.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Patrick. Mr. 𝐓𝐫𝐸𝐻, can you please introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, this is Rizwan Buttar. I'm Chief Innovation Officer of PharmaTrax. We help enable pharmaceutical manufacturers to track, trace, and verify their products for their own commercial needs or plans, as well as regulatory compliance. We are a R&D organization. We develop our own hardware, cloudware, middleware, software, and mobile apps. And our primary passion behind is to be able to provide patient safety in these low and middle income countries.
Okay, thank you, Rizwan. Thank you, Mr. Rizwan. Justin, okay, can you please introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi. Hello, everyone. You are probably familiar with me. I'm Justin Adden. I am a serialization expert for nearly a decade and work with clients to make the best choices around operating their serialization infrastructure as a business means. Thank you.
I think once we started to plan to this conversation, I called it. I told Justin that we have the both hat before. We are from vendor side at certain time, and now we are from a customer side at our time. So we can have today has the both hats for the customer side and from the vendor side. So are moderating this today's panel. Okay, let's start with our first question to Mr. Jerome and to Mr. Sebastian. What is the authority or the country is expecting from the national track and trace platform, national track and trace vendor platform, and what also the vendor of the national track and trace platform expecting from the authority or the country? So let's start, Mr. Jerome, with your answer.
So in Europe, there is a regulation, the Falsified Medicines Directive, which is the what do you want to do, and there's also what's called the Delegated Regulation, which is how do you do it. So it's a regulation that describes how the point of delivery verification system should work across Europe. That was then taken by the 𝐓𝐫𝐸, the European Medicines Verification Organization. They developed a set of 𝐓𝐫𝐸 specifications, which they call their user requirement specifications. Those specifications set out how the system should work in detail. 3 vendors that were then selected: SolidSoft Reply, who developed the European hub for 𝐓𝐫𝐸. SolidSoft Reply also developed national medicines verification systems, and also another company, Avato Systems, who also developed a medicines verification system. There was a third one called Agate. That was a UK company. When the system was set up, each vendor was given the opportunity to compete with the 3 vendors to win countries to provide their system. Avato and SolidSoft succeeded, Agate didn't, so they liquidated. But basically, the regulators, when they started up, this regulation was set up, was actually established in 2010. In 2013, they started working on the actual regulation. It was published in 2016, giving 3 years for the system to be set up. The system went live in 2019. Now, the expectation was that the system would be effectively a web services type interface. So a user, let's go with the manufacturers. The manufacturers all have a common product master data specification in which to upload data into the medicines verification system. They all do that: manufacturers, generic manufacturers, research-based manufacturers, and parallel distributors into a central hub. So they have a common data standard into which they upload the data. The data is distributed by the hub to 1 or more countries within the system, depending on the nature of the medicine, the batches and medicines uploaded. Then we have end users in the system who are pharmacists, hospitals, wholesalers, in and outpatient clinics and health centers, who all have to purchase systems and solutions from vendors, and they're vendors their choice. And working with those vendors, they will then, as the medicines go through the supply chain, they will either verify or what we call dispense, decommission them as they supply them to patients. It's a very complicated system. It is interoperable. The data is completely interoperable between all the different countries. So the system is completely interconnected. So the central hub and the 27 countries are all connected to each other. So there are concepts such as several markets sharing the same type of pack, what we call a multi-market pack. There is also the concept of sales being made between markets, where a manufacturer a product is say uploaded into Hungary, and it's sold into Spain. And when the Spanish person in Spain scans it, it'll check the records against the Hungarian system. Now, the system has a concept of exceptions, or what we call alerts. Alerts indicate there may be a potential falsification. The system has been working for the, as I said, for the last. It's been working since February the 9th, 2019. So it's about just over under 7.5 years now. It has been successful in reducing the incidence of falsification within Europe. There are different views on how successful it's really been, and whether it's actually those who are counterfeiting medicines are actually still able to operate, but without generating alerts and exceptions within the system, and that's something we're looking into at the moment. But that's the European Medicines Verification System. So there are vendors who provide to the manufacturers, there are vendors who provide to the end users, and there are vendors who provide systems, the national systems and the central hub. I hope that's a reasonable summary, Ahmed.
Yes, yes. Very interesting. Mr. Jerome, you took us to a journey of years in just a few minutes. Yeah, this is very interesting. Mr. Sebastiano, from your side, what you are expecting when you start to approach a regulatory or a country to start implementing a national track and trace platform, what are you expecting from the regulations or regulatory to have before you start your journey to implement the track and trace?
Well, in the case of Europe, all of the regulators all knew the date on which the regulation was going to go. When the regulation was published in 2016, they all knew there was 3 years. So they worked with the trade associations representing the different parts of the industry. So that would be the branded manufacturers, the generic manufacturers, the apparel distributors, the wholesalers, and the community pharmacists predominantly, to develop organizations who would be the national organizations. And the regulators work with those national organizations to help get the systems implemented. Each national organization, as I said, selected one of the three vendors to provide their national medicines verification system. And then all the different parties, so in the UK we had about 25,000 end users, all of those had to be notified via their trade associations or by the other representative bodies and by the Ministry of Health that they needed to get themselves ready and have systems in place in order to be able to verify medicines from the 9th of February 2019. Now, not all did. We did get most of them, but most countries have actually got about 95 to 99% compliance with the system. So basically, each of the stakeholders, the pharmacists, the wholesalers, the hospitals, and the manufacturers, they're obliged by the regulation to purchase systems and to put those in place. The regulators themselves in Europe, and if you look at small countries, some of the smaller countries have a single regulator. But if you look at the bigger countries like France or Germany or Spain, and as we had in the UK, you have a very fragmented model. So there are many parts of the regulatory regime, and there are many different regulators. So it's actually quite complicated for those who are sitting as users and vendors to interact with those parts of the regulatory authorities. But there was a lot of engagement with the regulators and the software providers during the early startup phase to make sure everyone was aware. The other thing was that we were told was that the UK at the time was part of the European single market, and the single market is a free market, and so therefore there had to be allowance for a competitive market for all vendors. So that was allow all vendors to compete, whether they were already incumbent supplying other systems to those who were obliged to comply with the regulation, or they were new ones that were coming in to take advantage of the opportunities represented by FMD being implemented. So in the UK, I think we had about 100 software suppliers, but I know that across Europe there's about 2,500.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Jerome. Thank you very much. Mr. Sebastian, what do you expect as a vendor from your side?
So that's a very loaded question, Ahmed. So what do I expect as a vendor? Well, maybe earlier before Jerome continued, you asked the question, what is it that I expect from a regulator? What is it that we need from a regulator? And I think this is where everything starts. So first and foremost, the regulator has to be at a point where a clear national strategy around healthcare has been formulated in the first place. And this, of course, comes with quite a few caveats, you know. So first and foremost, the question has to be answered. Is a regulator looking at a system and a concept similar to what has been implemented and what is being lived in Europe, which is, as the name itself suggests, a verification system of pharmaceutical product? Or is a regulator looking at a full-scale track and trace all the way from the source, from the origin to the destination or to the final point of dispense? So this is a very, very first important question that a regulator needs to be able to answer before we as a vendor can help them with solutions. So that's the very first question that we usually try to clarify with regulators. And as one trend that we can see with all of the various discussions that we are having around the Middle East, GCC, Africa, and other regions, that where these let me say national traceability initiatives, guidelines, or strategic health plans start to pop up. And over the last 1 or 2 years, all of us, I know we can see this. There's more and more countries that are coming with a certain national track and trace guidelines. And at that point in time, when something has already been formulated by the regulator, we as a vendor can come in and act as a consultant, act as an advisor before we even consider thinking about an implementation or a rollout. Because it all starts with understanding what is the ultimate goal that the regulator wants to achieve. And is it, let me say, the simplest form of verification, or is it really that the regulator is looking into much more additional market insight and understanding where product, not only what product moves into the market, but where does it move in country, what are strategic stock levels, what are certain trends in movement of goods, and what is also certain, you know, logistical chains that are part of this process. So this is really what, since you asked what is it that we expect from a regulator, what I expect from a regulator is that they have a general idea of what is it they're trying to achieve, and they also need to be able to answer the question in terms of general maturity of the in-country market. Because as you all know, when we talk about traceability, authentication, verification, we are not only looking at the manufacturer side of things, right? There's multiple stakeholders in the supply chain, whether those are wholesalers or that are selling into the country, or importers, distributors in country, pharmacy chains, hospitals. There's and of course the patients themselves, right? So there's multiple different stakeholders that we also need to understand, and the regulator has to have an idea of what is it that they want to achieve, what is the value add for all those individual stakeholders. So what is it that the regulator wants to achieve in the first place? What is the kind of data the regulator wants to get out of this? What is the level of maturity in country? And most importantly, what are the timelines that are expected? Because the one thing that I can tell you is that once we sit with regulators, everyone wants everything done yesterday. But we also know that most of the time this doesn't work out all too well. And I think Europe is a fantastic example of you know how things have been done very properly, because we had quite stretched out timelines. We had, you know, very clear targets for the individual countries. We only had a few countries with exceptions from the initial mandate, and it grew over time. So there was, and at the same time, the industry back in the 2010s, of course, the industry also had to get to a certain level of readiness to be able to serialize all of their products. And this is something where today we are, let me say, 7, 8, 9 years later. the pharmaceutical industry, the readiness of manufacturers looks totally different. The readiness of distributors looks completely different, which is why I think now we're seeing this venturing out into the true end-to-end traceability with all of its own challenges.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
very
think-
interesting.
I
Thank you, Mr. President, for the answer. Yes, Justin, yes, go on.
No, I was going to say, I think Patrick has a question, but just before Patrick starts, just to let you guys know, this is a freestyle session, and one of the things we would like to sort of unpack is that role between a regulator as the customer to the vendor. And Sebastian, thank you very much for kind of highlighting your expectations to the vendor. So if we can format perhaps a question as a vendor to the prospective customer, and equally Jerome and Patrick as customers to the vendor in terms of your expectation, that'd be great. So Patrick, please.
I think Sebastian touched on some of the parts of it, and maybe Jerome too. Maybe it'd be worthwhile just giving a quick answer on roughly how long it took from for the EMBO from the start to the finish, like from the gathering all the requirement specifications, doing all of that. And like Sebastian mentioned there, we see a lot of requirements coming in. Oh, we want to have a serialization system next week, and you have nothing in place, no requirements, no nothing. So maybe that could be a good point to touch to. And also Sebastian made a very good point about what's the problem are you trying to solve? If you're trying to find a counterfeit problem, are you trying to get more insights into the market? What are you trying to? That's a key thing, because we keep seeing that, oh, serialization, we're going to use this to do something, and we're looking at it going, well, it's not. We will do it, but it's not going to solve the problem you think it's going to solve.
So I just wanted to comment that when ministries of health and regulators are setting up systems, in the background, I don't know whether people are aware, there's an organization called the Verification and Traceability Initiative. And this is funded by the Gates Foundation, by the European Commission, and by the global GAVI, the Global Alliance on Vaccines and Immunization. And that's an organization that's going around and it's going into countries and looking at their maturity and their requirements for traceability and verification systems, and helping the countries that are not so mature to understand what it is they need to do to build their infrastructure and their digital healthcare systems, to build their capability, to understand what's required, and to do the advocacy about how they get prepared such that they can take on those traceability systems. So while each of the countries that is actually looking at implementing a system can engage with the Verification Traceability Initiative, and they are engaging with those countries to give them the support that they need. Now, that doesn't always mean that that those who are in the ministries of health and the regulators necessarily have the right experience about what it takes to implement a system or a traceability and verification system nationally, and the timelines involved, and the timelines in getting everyone in those countries ready to be able to undertake traceability and verification at a national scale, and everyone to do it all at the same time. It's quite a complex undertaking.
And if I may add something, Jerome, I think you pointed it out, and also thank you for just highlighting the role that VTI is playing, for the industry, for regulators, etc. The other thing that can be very important for us to understand the challenge, and also understand how regulators operate, how regulators can implement this, but also how we as vendors can fit into all of this, is we also need to understand if the underlying goal is purely one of public health, or whether there's certain other issues that need to be resolved alongside this mandate. And just one example for that is additional excise collection, right? Or closing certain tax or customs leakage. But in order to enable this as part of a mandate, so essentially bringing in the customs side of things and traceability, which in my opinion is the perfectly right thing to do. But this also means that not only the Ministry of Health or the respective regulator needs to be at a certain level of maturity, you need to look at the country as a whole. What is it ready for? What is it capable of, right? So this is just another area that we also have to consider in all of this.
Okay, yeah, very very interesting discussions, and I think it is extended to the customer, Justin. So this is, I think, what we expect from our today's discussion. Let's move to the customer side, and let me ask Mr. Patrick and Mr. Rizwan, what you expect, Mr. Patrick, from your vendor, from your track and trace vendor, from the machine side till the software side, and also what is Mr. Rizwan, what we will ask you, what is your expectation from the customer when you implement your solutions in the facility. So let's start by the answer of Mr. Patrick.
In many of the cases, and maybe with the more mature companies, the more mature farmers will be doing this a long time. I mean, many of our vendors per se don't do any interactions with the regulatory authorities. We usually have a centralized system that does that. We wouldn't normally have a line level system reporting directly to a health authority, for example, right? One of the big things that we face, and I mean, we spoke about this just early before the call started, was we look at this often as a technical issue. We're going to install some system, some equipment to do something. And then there is an aspect of that, but the whole supply chain side of it, how products, where they come from, all of that is a bigger topic usually. And also the master data aspects of it, whether that's supply chain master data, regulatory master data. And well, the other thing is that these systems, the serialization systems, they fit in to other systems inside in companies, right? They're not going to be the system of record for master data, regulatory data, etc. The interface to these systems, and how can we do that, you know, in an easy way? And then there's the other logic, the basic stuff of like, can I print on the folding box, right? Has that an implication? Because sometimes the quality is not maybe what it should be, especially if you want to get certain good quality grades. All of those sides of the things are really, really important for this to work. That's just from the manufacturing serialization side of it and quick reporting. From the regulatory side, then we just need clear specifications, and hopefully they will stick to some global GS1 standards. That really helps when they do that. I don't know if that's helped or not, but maybe it'll open a discussion with Rizwan and others.
We will elaborate, of course, and many other the other question. We will elaborate more, of course. Mr. Rizwan, what you expect from your side to find at the customer side once you start your journey to implement the track and trace?
So I would first start with optimizing the title of today's webinar. What it says is customer versus vendors. But successful track and trace projects begin when both sides stop thinking in terms of versus and start acting as one implementation team. The national platform or the guideline may be the most visible part of the system, but trustworthy compliance data is created much earlier on packaging lines, inside factories, and through disciplined business processes. So a good vendor does not merely deliver what the customer asks for. It helps the customer understand what the implementation will require. Especially what I would define, a new term that I just coined, is emerging markets in terms of serialization or track and trace mandates, where the guidelines are just coming in. They're nascent new markets, just like Patrick mentioned, that very global organizations, they have done it before in other parts of the world. They have a global team who can help the local team. We were talking about emerging markets where it's all new. So a good vendor should also be able to help customer understand what the implementation will require by getting the knowledge on their behalf from the global best practices and translating them to local context. A vendor that always says yes during procurement may create serious problems during implementation. A vendor who agrees to help understand, print, verify, or serialize unfolded cartons, eventually he will get the order at the procurement says, okay, just agree to it. But when the degradation of print, when data integrity of which packs actually went out, which didn't. So a good vendor should be able to say no to a customer, even at the cost of having a rift, having a resistance, just in the best interest of the organization, because eventually they're responsible for print integrity and data integrity in the entire life cycle of the product. So independent technical guidance, apart from selling the solution, is not resistant. It's like more responsible implementation. So capacity building is something that's needed, especially in emerging markets.
Could I add to that? I think that is an excellent point, right? The last thing you want is a vendor that'll say yes to everything, and a lot of them do. And we obviously understand the reason why, but sometimes it's much better to push back and go, well, we've seen this done a different way. You know, that is very, very important, particularly if the companies are not that experienced in it. So that's a really good point. And you shouldn't be shy about it either, you know.
And just a question from...
Yes, I'm sure. I will ask you because I am sure you have a question. So yes, go just.
Yeah. So just to sort of frame this, as a regulator, right? You know, there's these emerging countries, in Africa and West Asia. How does that regulator approach this problem of, or this challenge of identifying a vendor to provide an infrastructure for their track and trace ambitions, but also how does that vendor know that they're making the right choices? So it's easy to say, okay, well, I'm going to select a vendor, but what if it impacts the actual serialization community in that region negatively, right? It's difficult to connect to, it's difficult to upload data. So how does a regulator as a customer determine its success criteria to implement technology, but more importantly, for its patrons and its registrants to be able to integrate that system at minimal cost to them and to reap business benefits from the compliance requirements?
Standards.
Absolutely.
Do not go off on something special. Don't reinvent the wheel, because ultimately, I mean, for our systems, if we have a standard way of integrating, it doesn't matter really who the vendor is. Now, that does not mean the vendor is not important in this whole thing, right? I mean, we've seen some, and you have the vendor side and the technology side. Apologies, but they put on a lot of different stuff. Like, I will give the example of 𝐶𝐞𝐿. I think it was really good. They had weekly webinars. You could go there, you could talk, you could discuss. Really helpful. A lot of good documentation. What the technology behind it was rather irrelevant, right? Is we knew how we could interface to it. So don't reinvent the wheel and follow the standards. That's what I would say. That would be from a pure interfacing perspective. But I'll let others chime in.
Okay, let's take the answer of Mr. Sebastian about this.
Sure, thanks. So I think so if I'm looking at what a vendor can do to support all of this is, so number one, promote and adhere to the global de facto standards that we are all operating under already. So this is very much to the previous speaker's point, right? So do not try to reinvent the wheel. So there's wheels on all of our cars already. So why don't just use them? The other thing is, as a vendor, what I can only speak of what we are doing, right? But I mean, we have been seeing this both from the side operating systems for a regulator, but we're also, of course, seeing this from the side of supplying our solution hardware and software to the industry. So where we are the ones that have to integrate into national systems. So what we are now practicing for when we're talking with the regulators, where we're advising them, and what we're actually providing is multiple interfaces. Make sure that you understand that not every company has the same level of readiness to report data. They might all be willing, more or less, but not everyone can build complex B2B connections from day one. So you need to have facilities to allow for provisioning of the data via, let me say, more manual approaches, right? So that's the one thing. And the other thing is where we have to advise the regulator again, is to make sure that the traceability system itself, or the national hub, very likely is not the only solution to the problem, because it's great that I can provide a system that can track certain things. But to me, also the question becomes, do I have linkage to other regulatory systems for, let me say, product registration data? So do I need to connect into other systems, or do I need to get additional data from other sources? So it's not just saying I provide the platform, or we provide the platform to the regulator, and then regulator, you please enforce it on the industry. So you can do this in a mature market when you're replacing an existing system. Maybe that is possible, but if you're coming into a net new market, we need to understand the landscape of the data that is prevalent. We need to look at the local industry, so the local manufacturers, right? Because the one thing that a regulator certainly does not want to cause is harm to the local industry. So you need to make sure whether it might be advisable to start with a national scale pilot to bring in any sort of in-country manufacturing on board, make sure that they are ready to play with the big boys.
Interesting. Very well. I think, Mr. Jerome, also you can have some highlights about regarding this, because the authority side is can also have a point of view in this stuff.
Yeah, well, when we were in the UK, when we implemented our point of delivery verification system, did we work with the regulator very closely? Yes, we did. But we also had a very clear for manufacturers, there was a very clear specification for what the requirements for the data were to put the data into the system. There were a set of vendors that followed the GS1 standard for things like the data matrix and for product codes and those sorts of things, but it didn't follow the 𝐕𝐞𝐳𝐼S standard, and it still doesn't follow the 𝐕𝐞𝐳𝐼S standard. So there is no aggregation, for example, in the European system. But we then at the other end, when you're looking at those in the downstream supply chain in terms of wholesalers, hospitals, and pharmacies, they were provided with software tools to allow the vendors to develop solutions that were compliant with the regulations. But it's very important that vendors are not required to be regulated. They're not regulated by the regulator. They build systems that comply with the regulations. It is the customer who purchases solutions from those vendors, and they have to assess how they comply with the regulations. And every vendor will tell you they comply with the regulations. We made sure in Europe, and certainly made sure in the UK, that every vendor that connected to our system went through a set of acceptance tests to make sure that their systems worked before we connected them to the system. Because what we didn't want was to have a whole load of systems that didn't work properly. We made sure that all of those were in place. So as a customer, each your system properly tested. Does it work? How does it meet the requirements? That was a really important thing. Our experience of regulators was the main regulators we dealt with were at the policy level within the National Ministry of Health and National Medicines regulator. They weren't digital technology people. They didn't understand digital technology. They didn't understand that if you connect a supply chain end-to-end digitally for the first time and just connect everyone together, it's going to be a complex undertaking, and it will be in most countries. It's quite a complex undertaking. And on the manufacturer side, the big issues that we see is around data and data management, particularly with the medium and smaller companies where they're using contract manufacturers. And you've got contract manufacturers in India and China who are servicing many customers who are also serving many different markets and have different requirements. So it's really you need to have a good focus on what does that mean? How are you going to manage that data? The other thing that we've seen is when the data comes in from the CMO into the manufacturer and has to be loaded or either provided into the supply chain as part of a traceability system or loaded into a system, you need to make sure that the processes, the operational procedures within the company doing that are really clear. And does everyone know who's doing what? Because you can get data issues there, either data not being uploaded or data not being provided or data not being transferred or data quality issues. And that creates a lot of issues as you start to put supply data into the supply chain. When you do it from the perspective of the hospitals and the the hospitals and the wholesalers and the pharmacies, it's really about, if they are doing a lot of scanning, then they need to make sure that the vendor understands how a scanner works to meet those regulatory requirements. It should work out of the box for a GS1 standard. But what our experience in Europe, and Justin and others can attest, there has been a significant challenge to get it working. And even now, we're seeing the increase in pharmacy automation, the use of pharmacy robots. We're actually seeing a new change going on, which is having a further impact on what we're doing. So, yes, there are a lot of complexities in connecting customers with vendors and vendors with systems and getting the whole thing to work together consistently.
Very interesting. Thank you, Mr. Jerome, for your answer. Mr. Spistian, you have a comment?
Sorry. Yes, one comment. So Jerome, you mentioned something that is extremely crucial in the downstream supply chain. So sometimes we refer to it as a the two-gun problem, right? So you're in the warehouse or you're in the pharmacy, and you're mandated to scan product because of a traceability mandate, and you have your own, whether it's a warehouse management system, warehouse execution system, pharmacy system, where you're already used to scanning the linear barcodes. I mean, everyone has been doing this for 20 years. But now all of a sudden, you have a secondary system that is not properly integrated with your existing in-house systems, and you're running around with two scanners, right? One for the 2D, one for the linear barcode. And I think this is where the other question would then come up, and I'm just gonna ask this, I guess, to the audience, if I may, Ahmed, because when we start integration, if we start a rollout of such a national system, a new national system, what is the realistic expectation for us as an industry to really reach proper compliance? And I'm not talking about 100%. 100% will never be possible, but let's just say 95% compliance in market. How long will this take us? Because we will have grandfathered stock in the market for 2-3 years at least, right? So open question to everyone. What is your assumption there? How long does it take to actually call it a success?
I like this question because when I discussed yesterday with Justin, I told him at certain time we will reach to a conversation together between the regulator and the customer, because the percentage of compliance, I think, is the main focus from the regulatory side and from also the vendor side. And at certain time, it's happened in the Middle East. At certain times, they may lead to the change in the model of the reporting to increase the percentage of compliance. So this is a very interesting question. Mr. Jerome, if you have a comment, Mr. Patrick, Mr. Rizwan, anyone have a comment?
Yeah, Sebastian, to answer your question, it depends on who's looking, right? I will put this in this terms. If I report the data correctly, right, as a manufacturer, without issues, and there's supply chain issues down further on, do I see that as a success for me in terms of my part of the whole puzzle I've finished? If somebody in the supply chain hasn't implemented something correctly or the process aren't in place, would I deem that to be successful? No, but would I deem what I'm doing to be successful? Yes. Now, in the case of the EU, obviously, if we get alerts back, and that's never nice, and the majority of them are probably unnecessary, but I think that the point of what I'm trying to get is success depends on who you're asking, right?
Absolutely. And I think adding on to what Patrick's saying, right, is businesses are in the business of making money, right? It may be that you sell medicines, but you don't sell them for free. So compliance is a cost burden from a business perspective. There's a regulatory requirement there. From a business perspective, there's a cost burden. So there's always going to be a need to find a cost opportunity from implementing it. In this case, it's data in most areas. But yeah, I would say that these decisions have to be balanced against what is viable for the business as well. Because if compliance prices you out of a market, you're not going to be able to make any money.
I need just, yes, Mr. John, you can, yes, you can go. Yes.
Okay, I just want to answer what Sebastian asked, which was how long does it take to transition from non-serialized medicines to serialized medicines? And when we started up, there were in the UK, there were already serialized medicines. There were many packs coming in from India that were marked with serialized products, and many of those were over-the-counter products that weren't in the scope of FMD. So it took about 2 to 3 years for those to wash through the system, because you've got to remember there are fast-moving medicines, and you all know this, you're pharmacists, there are fast-moving medicines in every market, and there are slower-moving medicines, and you have to allow for the slower-moving ones to the stock to work through on those. And so it can take several years. In Europe, most of the countries implemented what they called a stabilization period to allow everyone to get ready before they started really enforcing the quarantining of medicines on the verification system. And in fact, I was talking with one big country last week, and they were saying that they're going to come out of their stabilization period possibly the beginning of next year, and that'll be 7 years after the system started. But they are one of the biggest and most complicated countries, so it can take a long time to actually get there. When you do put that compliance in place, when the regulator does put that compliance in place and you stop that, it has a positive impact on compliance by the users within the system. And that's largely, particularly with pharmacists and hospitals, largely in many countries tied to reimbursement. If you're scanning the medicines and you scan them correctly, you get reimbursed. And if you don't, or you don't do it properly, you don't get reimbursed. And there's quite a big commercial driver. I'm not sure in the traceability markets whether you have the same motivation there. But certainly where it's tied to reimbursement, it seems to be a driver for compliance of those who are using it. And that's also then needs to make sure that the systems from the vendors are working correctly for the customers. Yeah? And to make sure those systems are configured. So that's how you get better configuration and those sorts of things. Does that make sense?
Yes. Mr. Spisani, you have comment? Before Mr. Spisani, or we can have this conversation first again. It is very important to highlight that because the percentage of compliance is very interesting in most of the, maybe in the Middle East reporting systems. And we need to highlight, Mr. Spisani, the difference between the verification model in 𝐕𝐞𝐽 and also in the traceability model maybe in other track and trace solutions or track and trace national platform is in the Middle East especially. So yes, Mr. Spisani, you can put your comment.
So I just want to pick up on something that Justin said. When Justin started, I think one of the most important discussions for everyone in the industry, which is around cost. So let's understand the cost impact a little better, and I think we need to dissect it and look at it from quite a few different angles. Okay, so serialization at the manufacturer level has become an absolute commodity. Okay, so it is there to stay. Everyone does it. Okay, I'm just gonna say it like this. Okay, so from the manufacturer side, they have the systems in place, they have the lines in place. The majority of the manufacturers have their aggregation systems in place to smoothen the logistical operations. So that part of the cost is there. Now, how does the cost actually translate into positive business impact or business benefit, right? So the moment on a country or regional level, the serialization as such is being enforced by the regulator. What is happening, and we've all of us, I'm sure we have all seen this in quite a few markets where me as a vendor, we have received requests from manufacturers that weren't ready, that were at the risk of being washed out of the markets because they didn't serialize. So what happened is they lost business to those that were ready. So what it means for the pharma companies, those that are ready, those that treat serialization as just an absolute basic standard to comply with, they are not at the risk of losing business or not growing their business into those markets that are coming out with those new traceability mandates. the other point is just looking at the cost of serialization. I mean, you can drill down to the cost of the serial number on the pack, how much does it cost to manufacture, right? But what you can also do is you can look at just by reducing illicit imports into the country that are not going via the proper supply chains. You can expect that your margins in those markets are not necessarily gonna decrease, but increase, because you will be able to sell more legit product into those markets, and that will make it all the way to the patient. So you also have lesser issues of post-market surveillance, or issues of counterfeit product being associated with your brand. So I think those are benefits. Some of them you can measure monetarily in a rather easy way. Others are more when it comes to brand protection. But that really puts the cost argument in perspective, in my opinion.
Okay, very interesting. Thank you, Mr. Sebastian. Mr. Patrick, you have a comment?
Yeah, I just want to touch back on the compliance side of it. I mean, the compliance is the setup, is the processes that we have in place internally, right? We have the technical side, but also the processes, like who gets notified, what they do, etc. All of that's really not vendor specific, right? Those things. So I just want to make that clear, that these processes are, we all need to have them. And then Sebastian, you touched right on the costs, right? Everybody, I constantly hear, oh, we need end-to-end traceability, and you're going, okay, that's great. Who's going to pay for it? Yeah, because usually the people asking for it are not the ones having to pay for it and do it, you know. And that's why we understand why. And then from which perspective do you want this end-to-end traceability and all of these things, and what problems are you trying to solve?
Yes, Mr. Jerome, yes, you can.
But if you look at the implementing either a traceability or a verification system, there are benefits that perhaps the ministries of health don't always describe. And we found, certainly in the UK, the Ministry of Health didn't describe to those who are impacted the other secondary benefits of implementing a traceability system: stock control, waste management. Those two, particularly in a pharmacy where you've got stock, expiry date management, those sorts of things. You don't waste medicines by them going out expiring. Recalls can be managed better. Similarly, product withdrawals can be managed, and the European system allows for that. With traceability system, particularly aggregation, also things like returns. Those are big, for wholesalers, big issues around returns. Yeah. And now what we also see in the markets, particularly if you see the markets where you're getting native scanning on mobile phones, with things like the Google Lens, you're getting electronic patient information, and that's enabling people who are patients to be able to verify the authenticity of their medicines, particularly in some of the smaller markets or those with less infrastructure in their countries. That's a big advantage for them. And then for hospitals, there are other things that the traceability and verification is driving things like what they have something called scan for safety, where basically they're reducing the number of prescribing errors in hospitals, and particularly medication errors in prescribing in hospitals, by making sure they scan the patient, they scan the medicine, they scan the bed, and they scan the healthcare provider to make sure they're giving the right medicine to the right patient. So there are other advantages, and by having those advantages, reducing the number of prescribing errors, you can actually get increased throughput and reductions in adverse events and those sorts of things in hospitals. So there are many other benefits that come out of using traceability and verification systems that are not really very well communicated, I think.
I would just like to jump on a point that Jerome made, and maybe it's a point that we can think about. From my opinion, my humble opinion, you cannot scan a barcode and verify that the medicine is authentic. You can scan it. It can tell you, yes, we know that serial number, right? It exists in our system, etc., etc. But to make a claim from that point that the medicine is authentic it's a leap not many legal experts in the pharma companies would allow you to make. To be quite honest.
I think I'd agree with that. So when you scan the medicine, it'll tell you, is that medicine verified against this digital twin in the system? Yes, it does. Yeah. Is it a fake medicine? Because if you have two medicines, one fake and one not, if you scan the first one and it's fake, it'll verify against the system. It's only when you scan the second one that it'll tell you, in particular, if it's a verification system, that it might raise as an exception to the system.
Yeah, that's the case in the EU, but again,
Yeah.
it depends on the back-end systems, right?
It does depend on the back-end systems. You're absolutely right.
And this is the point, and we see this constantly on LinkedIn, and it seems to be my a challenge I've taken on in my spare time to tell people stop making these claims because it is not correct. I understand the why it is, but it should not be there, and we should not be. It should be more spoken about because countries will think this. And I've seen GS1 making the same claims, right? So it's not just somebody out there, you know.
These are decision support tools. They support the person authorized to supply the medicine to make a decision whether to supply or not.
Correct. Yeah.
Mr. Rizwan, you have a comment?
Yeah. So we struggle all the time to explain this cost-benefit analysis because manufacturers take it as a cost burden, an initial cost burden on them, and primarily, especially working in low margin economies, that's a bigger challenge. And we always work with them and tell, hey, the regulator's mandate, the regulator's perspective is patient safety, recall management. They have a mandate and they would be working on it. We are already serializing. Let's do a private track and trace. From the L3, let's run a private L4 track and trace. Let's join hands. Let's find out incentives where you can have ROI. So approach has to be beyond compliance, ROI-driven approach. You want patient safety, we can get it. You want analytics, and now there is increasing demand and innovative approach. For example, we're working on a product for advanced market, for SRA market. It's a Talk to Your Medicine. It's a patient engagement platform for lifestyle diseases, where there's a recurring aspect to it. The guy can scan and a bot opens up. He can do like a ChatGPT style, freestyle talking, and we can give, hey, I have already had this food taken, and this, would it be right to combine this with it? Not a medical doctor specific advice, but more of a encouragement and where reinforcement is needed. So we need to look from a vendor perspective for all the my customers, the manufacturers, that's the one that takes the cost burden entirely. So for them, we have to work together and find out ROI. And beyond compliance, what is ROI that they can do apart from compliance? And let's have a private track and trace, a private solution modules running. You want to know which of your sales team is performing well, we can help you track that. You want patient engaged better, we can help you with that. And so I believe this is something, especially with increasing this powerful device that we have in our hand, the generation changing, like I belong from dinosaur age, but the Gen Z now is digital first. They're digital native. So you're looking at the future for your brand. You would like your package to be smart and connected.
Okay, interesting. Mr. Patrick, I think you have a comment.
No, Sebastian is first there.
Okay.
You know, Patrick, I don't mind. You could also go first, but all right. So, the point that was made on is the product authentic, or is it truly the right medicine? I mean, yeah, we all know this. Yeah, you can scan it once, you can scan it a second time, maybe it will flag something in the system. Okay, we get all of that, but this is where, you know, if we are only looking at the data side of things, that is definitely not the end goal, right? Because there's so much more that goes with it. So I earlier spoke about the concept of brand protection actually being something commercially beneficial to the companies. Similarly, we also need to talk about, let me say, the physical protection that can be applied on the medicines to make traceability truly beneficial for the patient, to ensure that they really always get the right medicine, authentic medicine. So I'm talking about tamper proofing or similar measures. These are all things that are being applied in many markets. Are they going to protect us 100%? Certainly not. But this also goes back to the very initial question of what is it that how the vendors should advise the regulators, and this is to think one step ahead of only digital, right? Just to see, okay, what additional measurements have to be taken to ensure the patient safety. And that being said, I just, Ahmed, one other question I would like this maybe to be discussed today, and I'm just going to give it as an idea. And I think it was Jerome or Patrick mentioning it initially. My question would be, what comes next? Because now traceability is something we can all do. We built a software, we built the hardware, all of us, we understand how it can be done. We also understand it takes, I appreciate Jerome, I appreciate you say 2 to 3 years to flush out the majority of it, so make it a successful implementation. So we understand all of the basics. But what comes next? What is after this, right? And this is the handover to then eventually start tagging traceability data to the actual patient data, to the digital patient records, right? And I would just like to ask the question if this is something that you see coming up next as the next big thing. What kind of timelines would you be expecting on that? Because I think it is the logical evolution of this, right? Tying this to patient data, tying this to insurance data. I think Jerome, you mentioned this already, making sure that once you properly scan out, you get the refunds, etc. So just as a question to the round.
I'd like to put a comment before the answer to this question, as regarding, I think the topic of the cost is taking the most of the focus here, but also I need to emphasize on what you mentioned, Mr. Sebastian, because the brand protection is like now is the main focus for many industries, even outside of the pharma industries, because I don't know if I'm sure that you know this numbers, but counterfeit is high economic parallel market with the pharma. Parallel market of counterfeit is around $432 billion according to WHO, which is 200 more than the WHO capability to stay, and support supposed to be for the middle and low and countries. It's around for 10% of the products is counterfeited. This is very high percentage. We face a situation in Egypt before that we have a cefatraxone. Some companies in the cefatraxone, it was counterfeited, and these companies lose the sales for cefatraxone for around a year. So imagine one of your mega products, you lose and the opportunity to sales for whole 1 year because of counterfeit. It is not your responsibility because someone counterfeited your products. So I know that the investment on the cost of the track and trace is very high cost, but the brand protection, especially in the low and middle income countries, it is very important to control the market and to keep the authenticity of not authenticity, keep your brand value and brand repetition in the market very well. This is aside. On the other side, as you mentioned, Mr. Sebastian, also there is another layers or a new additional layers need to be added. As Mr. Patrick said earlier, okay, the code is giving you some sort of high percentage of you are this code or this serial is inside our database, but we need to add additional layer, as you mentioned, timber evidence. Maybe as some countries maybe announce the 𝐓𝐫𝐚𝐜 announce putting timber evidence instead or additional to the JSON data matrix. Plus, also there is a non-clonable maybe technologies. There is a new technologies now maybe in place to add an extra layer to increase the brand protection more than or in another layer than the JSON data matrix. So this is just a highlight or the emphasizing on what you mentioned. Mr. Patrick, you have a comment?
Yeah, just I'll touch on the points you made there first, if I may. I mean, it comes back to the point we discussed. What problem are you trying to solve? I mean, if your problem is a counterfeit product, then maybe you need to look at a different solution, right? and then a track and trace solution. Maybe it has to be something else. Then the other thing to note is, okay, let's assume we implement some solution, right? Who is it aimed at? Is it aimed at patients will let's say scan this or check this, or is it pharmacists who will actually do it, and what are the unintended consequences of this, right? If they scan it and it says, oh, I can't find the code, or I can't find whatever it is, who do they contact? Do they not take the medicine? What do they do? What does the patient do? So that aspect needs to be addressed. Then I will just touch on something recently mentioned about, we often see it too, like we see, oh, we have a cloud-based solution with AI. Now, I'm a huge fan of it. I think it's the cheese, honestly. I think it's really good, right? I love it. And you can do all sorts. And people say, oh, the farm industry, they're archaic, they don't want to move forward. We do, but we need to do stuff in a controlled and structured way. The pharma companies are ultimately the ones that will have to answer the regulation. It won't be the vendor. I'm not going to ring up one of the vendors and go, oh, the regulator says this. We are responsible. And that touched on the point with Jerome as well, like about you scan the code, you get the EPI. Who gives it? The pharma company is ultimately going to be responsible, and that needs to be considered.
Absolutely. I'm just circling back on just some of the comments. I mean, Siddhartha, you made a point about the cost of entry being really high. It doesn't need to be. It doesn't need to be. I mean, so I can lend some experience. I mean, if you're beginning your serialization journey and you need to invest in serialization software, there are many options. And when you approach your potential software solution options, you should encourage them to demo. In fact, you should request a demo and for them to fulfill your criteria. So you should outline what your requirements are. But what you should be looking for are vendors who make your life simple. If a vendor comes along and it becomes complicated and they drown you with science, that's a red flag straight away, right? And unfortunately, many vendors are overpriced. The other important aspect is you need to achieve interoperability. Not everybody is going to be using the same vendor, right? What's important, though, is how they communicate. So you need to be looking for the things that benefit your exchange, the things that benefit your wallet, and the things that reduce complexity as key indicators that will give you a much better cost value solution, because there are a lot of people out there that will make it very complicated and a lot of overpriced software, especially I mean the people here are a little bit different, but there are a lot of vendors out there who will charge differing rates to who you are and your revenue. So look out, be diligent. Don't let people blind you with science or tell you this is complicated, because it shouldn't be. It's digitization. The concept of digitization is to simplify things. So you can implement serialization at a cost. And if you're curious about that, feel free to talk to anyone on this panel, but do a selection process. Don't just pick a brand. Don't just pick a name because your friends tell you or everyone else is telling you to do that. Do your due diligence and look for the signs that bring benefits and simplify your operation.
Yeah, Justin, this question is very important, because I think this question can be for all the panel.
Yes, absolutely.
For the regulator, for the vendor of the regulator, and for the customer even, and also for the vendor of the customers. What can you provide, or what can you do with small and medium manufacturers, small and medium distributors, small pharmacies? Because this is, at the end of the day, it is a percentage of compliance. You need to calculate this percentage of compliance. So once you started track and trace in a certain market, you need to expect your expectation of how this layer can be compliant with your national track and trace platform. So I need to receive an answer from this question from Mr. Jerome side and from Sebastian side regarding the reporting of this layer. And also I need to find the solutions from Mr. Patrick and from Mr. Rizwan point of view, how to challenge the cost of the track and trace implementation in small and medium manufacturers, distributors, and pharmacies. Let's start by Mr. Jerome, Mr. Sebastian, then we'll take an answer from Mr. Patrick and Mr. Rizwan, then I have a comment from Justin. So Mr. Jerome, yes?
Well, I remember when we started up, when we announced our funding model in April 2018, and we were going to charge manufacturers the equivalent of about, in UK pounds, well, I'll do it in UK pounds, it was going to be about £35,000. So for the very small, for what we call the micro manufacturers, and even some of the small manufacturers, that was a huge cost to them. And we did recognise that, and we worked with the Ministry of Health. In fact, we waived the fees for those who are below a certain level, certain value, so that they could get on cheaply. That didn't mean to say that they didn't also need to have a serialisation vendor. So we're in the European model, the cost is borne by the marketing authorisation holders who market medicines in a country. And for the very small companies now, and even the ones who are just above being a micro company, it's quite a significant investment. So there is tapering. A lot of countries actually, in terms of that model, make sure that the smaller companies are given lower costs to be able to participate. But also with the vendors, it's also looking for the vendor, and as Justin said, it's doing your due diligence, it's looking at what your requirements are, but also looking at the market for the vendors. Some of the vendors will actually provide, web-based solutions or cloud-based solutions that don't require you to have the infrastructure there if you're looking at software. If you're looking at manufacturing systems, that's something I'm not quite so familiar with, and perhaps some of the others could actually comment on that.
Okay, so when it comes to the costs again, so software side of the cost, I think, yeah, we can all agree. There's even for those Jerome, the micro manufacturers, the specialty manufacturers that have very, very low volumes of product, right? For them, applying serialization via mostly semi-automated or automated ways is going to be a very huge cost impact. So that's where we need to think what can be solutions, right? One solution is, and I'm not generally in favor of that, but this is something that a regulator also has to take a clear decision whether they will allow post-production marking, right? So this can be the application of serialization labels in a manual fashion. This sometimes we today see this sometimes on packs that are repurposed originally for other markets than being shipped and relabeled. The question becomes, how can we still then guarantee the authenticity of the product, right? So how can we still know that this is a product that originated from a proper manufacturing site, so that we know the history of the product? So the regulator can decide to limit the application of labels to certain accredited stakeholders. So it can be an entity that directly buys the product from a manufacturer, labels them centralized in country. So this can be a solution to the problem for those manufacturers not having to buy expensive manufacturing equipment to apply serialization. As I said, in general, I'm not in favor, because once you allow this, there's many loopholes, and manufacturers will find creative ways to get exemptions or get granted that they can start labeling post-production. I'm just trying to say, okay, there is possible ways. We have, by the way, also seen this kind of practice quite extensively being used on product that was shipped into the Russian market. So where and we all know that was is a very complex system altogether, but that can be one solution on the hardware side, right? On the software side, yes, there's enterprise level, highly integrated traceability systems that directly talk with your ERP systems. not every manufacturer requires this. So there's many lightweight, cloud-based, simple serialization solutions out there. Without giving names, we all know they are there. They are not from the big vendors in the market, but they are available for small manufacturers. The other option that certainly is there is that the level 5 system as such, level 5 systems in general, I'll put it like this. I can't guarantee that every level 5 system supports this, but level 5 systems can also take up some of the functionality that level 4 corporate level serializations do. So it can be that a regulator can decide that they will issue serial numbers to manufacturers if they don't have a serialization system on their own. A manufacturer or a government level 5 system can be the issuer of serialization codes, maybe for free, maybe at a small cost, but that is an option that is there. And then it's also the question in costs. So on the software side, how do I get the data into the systems? That again, depending on your volumes, if you're doing multiple shipments every week into a market with hundreds of thousands of individual units, then no one is going to think about manual data entry. But if I'm shipping specialty oncology medicine, maybe 5 packs per month, then I might as well just use the functionality in level 5 systems to do the manual data reporting. So there's ways to mitigate the cost impact. Some of them are good, some of them are easy to use, some of them come with a certain risk, but that again is a decision that the regulator has to decide on whether they are willing to take the risk to ensure access for everyone.
Interesting. Mr. Patrick?
I think at the start, I mean, my position is if you're going to do serialization, your processes are going to change. So if you have a vendor that comes along and says, oh, we can do it and you won't have any impact, do not give them a purchase order. That would be my recommendation. Something is going to change. The degree of change will depend on, like I think Sebastian touched on, if you are a very, very small manufacturing, 100 packs a week, yeah, fine. But if you're producing hundreds and hundreds of thousands a day, it's a different scale altogether. You're not going to be scanning those by hand. You're not going to be labeling those by hand. There is a cost to it. The costs can be high, and I think Justin made some very good points on that. But it is going to have to change at some point. You're going to have to report this data. You can do manual reporting, of course, but that's again a process you need to implement on your side, on the manufacturing side.
And Patrick, just to add to this, I mean, we should not underestimate the process benefits on the manufacturer side once they have implemented serialization, because with this additional data collection, you're unlocking quite a lot of ways to improve your supply chain, your operations once it's fully implemented and across all your facilities. So that's something that we've seen this serialization in the automotive industry for the last 20 years, and this has unlocked tremendous commercial potential and improvements in the processes. So that's something we should also understand. Yes, the regulator mandates it, you're implementing it, but don't just implement it just for the sake of complying with the regulations. See what other additional benefits for your business you can get out of this.
Yeah, if we take like the EU serialization, right, where we don't aggregate generally, or we can't report aggregation, should I say. I mean, you produce your report and you send it down the supply chain. You really have no further visibility. If you do want visibility, you can aggregate it, but that means you need to give the data as well. So sending it, aggregating it, holding the data, and not sharing the data with the downstream partners it doesn't really bring huge benefit in terms of what's going on, particularly if you're going to repack and resell into different markets, your shared packs like we discussed earlier, how you do that. And all of those processes, all those touch points along the whole supply chain. I think one of the big things is your master data and your supply chain mapping. They're probably the two main critical components of this. I mean, there's obviously others too, but they would be the ones that I would suggest that people on this call and others look at doing for their products, you know.
Okay, Mr. Rizwan, I expect you an answer. Yes, I'm coming to you. Expecting an answer regarding the challenging of the cost in in low and medium or maybe a low and medium income manufacturers and wholesalers?
Yeah, the cost, especially the solutions which were designed for SRA countries, and when they are imported or made available, or when the negotiations happen in emerging markets or low and middle income markets, the price differential or affordability is almost impossible. So that's what we like. Another term that I coined or maybe borrowed from is think global, act local. Here we have manufacturers which are running CAM cartoners at 400 packs a minute. And downstream, just half a kilometers away, there's another manufacturer whose highest speed is 40 packs per minute. The same solution doesn't work for both of them. Both of them very different dynamics. So the cost, but the solutions globally which were designed are just like one solution for all. So what we do is that apart from US, we go visit their lines. We see, okay, you want to comply to regulations, you have done some interpretation, let us help you interpret well. One of the key requirements is, what is your affordability? What is your budget? And we are happy and confident to say no if they are going into a direction which would eventually lead us into a problem with relationship between us. Hey, why didn't you tell us at that time? Because we were new, but you were experienced. You had studied the whole world. You should have told us, and rather than saying yes. So I would reflect back to where is saying no, but most importantly, being flexible in terms of allowing cost-effective solutions, scalable solutions. Another aspect these days that due to the global AI momentum, chips, RAM, PC, compute, everything is super expensive in the past just 3 months. So virtualization, cloud compute, that's helping a lot. Small and medium manufacturers, they do not have a data center or a very high tech or IT infrastructure or team of their own. So that allows us easy onboarding. And with hardware that we manufacture here, we have bespoke tailored solutions. If camera is one of the major component of the cost. The electromechanical, all the metal work, we do it all in-house. So they do not have to spend money on a finished product that's import. We make it just maybe 100 kilometers away from where the manufacturer is. And it's not a value-added product that's imported and it's customized. So a lot of localization is helping a lot. A camera, which is good for 400 packs a minute, it's not needed for a production speed of 60 packs a minute. And their cost comparative can sometimes be 1/4. So think global, act local, lots of localization. But most importantly is, now I would come towards the structure of it, that a track and trace solution should not be designed for regular, it should be designed in a architecture that is of evolutionary nature. Regulations are not frozen. Like today, a guideline is issued, we are complying it. It should anticipate the change. It should know what's going to happen and is possible in the next 5-10 years. And customer won't know that. He's a pharma manufacturer. The regulator even doesn't know that. He's a regulator in healthcare space. He's not a enterprise IT company. So we have to anticipate the change, the data need for products expiration date plus 6 years, the architecture, the disaster recovery plans, and if something goes wrong, how much time it would take you to get back in shape. The production line will be ready, but your backup of 400 GBs, how much it's going to take to be available again? 8 hours. In 8 hours downtime, I could afford maybe the entire machines replaced. So that's a lot of architecture planning ahead. As I say, that this is not a printing project, it's a data project. We have to consider it that way.
Absolutely, and that's the value. That's one of the mistakes I think a lot of people fall into, is not understanding the importance of that data and building a relationship with that data in terms of their business. And it often gets lost into the systems they're convinced to implement. So I think that's a really valid point. Another thing that is kind of interesting, that I was thinking about, was the AI stuff as well, right? I mean, I don't know how you guys feel, but there's, I'm with Patrick. You know, it's the bee's knees. It's brilliant, but it's immature, and I think there's benefits and there's disadvantages. For me at the moment, implementation of AI and serialization, a red herring. I I also think that these serialization vendors that are pushing out agentics, I don't see the value. You're literally implementing a chatbot to just increase the amount of time or create a voice activation to say, give me a status and a serial number. So I don't see any benefit currently to utilizing agentics in the supply chain at all, right? The fundamentals.
Justin,
So-
you need a special session for AI in final track and trace.
Tell me. But what I was going to say was, on the flip side of that, on the other side, where people are using it as a tool and not just the chatbot, we are seeing very incredibly creative solutions coming from using AI as a tool and not just a chatbot, right? Especially software development, SaaS, right? You're seeing traditionally 2 years ago, the cost of creating an application may have been $1 million. The cost to create the application now is sub 100,000. So the total cost of ownership should actually reduce over time. And in terms of vendors, it should cost less to make the software in the future, right? So invariably, there are good signs to say the economy can be driven down and money can be reallocated into other areas, more value add services for the customer, right? So what are your views on that divide of AI where it's used uselessly as a chatbot or agentics that offer zero value to the supply chain, and using it as a way to drive down the costs of software?
So let me jump in here, because I'm not sure whether I was expecting that we would be talking about AI today or not. Probably I was expecting it. I wasn't planning on talking about what we're doing with it, but I think it can give quite a good insight. And Justin, with all you're saying, by the way, I'm in full agreement. So really unlocking the potential of AI in the serialization space, I don't think we're there yet. I agree with you. What is the true value at, right? But I'll let you know something that we are doing today, and we're doing this with our regulator-focused AI solution already today as we speak. Because one of the big challenges, and again, this is customer versus vendor, regulator versus vendor discussion today, right? So now I'm some while ago, as part of my journey in the serialization space and with the software vendors that I've been working with, I also had oversight over our validation team that was carrying out the work when it came to the actual validation and verification of all the connections, of the hundreds and thousands of connections that we had to build in the global pharma ecosystem. And that tends to be a important but also very tedious task. And right now with my teams, we're sitting on the other side of the equation, where we have one central system where we are connecting hundreds of stakeholders and manufacturers to the system that all require some form or sort of validation of the connection that they build to those regulator systems. And that is an area where we said this is an area where we are validating technical connectivity. That is something that's very measurable, and that is where we have completely moved to AI. So all of the onboarding that we're doing to our level 5 systems is I will say not 100%, but 95% AI driven. That's the only way of how we can keep up with the pace of how quickly those systems are being rolled out. So this is an area where AI does add tremendous benefit. And let me add one other thing. AI, we are also putting it in our systems as chatbots to help guide the people through the onboarding journey, for example. Those are areas where you can leverage it today. Those are areas where you actually create value. In this case, we are creating value for us as a vendor, because we have to put lesser resource on solving the same problems, right? but it is also like increasing the speed and the velocity of these projects, and also the actual quality, because once we remove the human component on these onboardings and all the technicalities, and you always follow a strict defined approach that will automatically be verified and tested, you're directly increasing the quality of data that we will eventually be providing to the regulators. So
That's an excellent.
that's my take on AI today.
No, but that's excellent. I think that's a really good and responsible use of AI, and I think that's the key here, is that responsibility. So I fully understand that application and think that's that step in the right direction. It's, you know, it's an efficiency driver, right?
Correct.
Yes. Mr. Patrick, you have a comment on this?
Yeah, just to the point, J-Mac, the reason I mentioned, I mean, I think when we're looking at the cost of these solutions, I think, and the vendors that we're going to use, one thing we should consider is, well, what happens if it doesn't work? What is the cost then, right? Then it's going to be, maybe we should put a little bit more in and look at it on that side. Then coming back to the AI point, absolutely agree. It depends on what it's going to be used for. That's the thing. It really is like, and how we can then implement it. If for us to make GMP-based decisions, it's something else as opposed to some general piece of information, like Sebastian, you mentioned onboarding, for example. You know.
Okay. Just to keep. Okay, Mr. Rizwan, you have a comment? Yes.
Yes. For AI, that's a very interesting area for me, especially on the development side. We, as a developer of solutions, we had the highest talent retention challenge. For onboarding a developer, it used to take us more than 1 year to help them understand JS1 standards, the pharmaceutical standard, because they were software developers. And during the startup boom, until we recently saw the winter of venture capital, we had this challenge. So on the internal organization, like as you mentioned, the cost of first developing solutions, especially the software side, not only it has reduced, but also it has become, our time to develop a product has become faster. We still have to have very thoroughly review all the code, see all the compliance, but retention challenge has been solved. So I have an agentic team. I name them whatever I want. They do not get tired. They deliver the code tomorrow morning. In fact, yesterday morning, actually, it's also possible. Just in case I just have to prompt them in time. They do while I talk, they'll already be doing their stand-ups, sending me updates on Discord. So on a lot of possibilities, faster and cost-effective have become, but as in the case of agentic AI, it still has to be a decision support system at point of sale, point of care, supply chain. It remains a decision support system. Secondly, there's lots of talk. There's again a term that I can borrow from another industry. Data is the new oil. It is, but just like the fossil fuels, data has also need to be refined. It has to be integrity. Bad data is bad AI. So the new data, it needs integrity. It needs well attribution, structure, timely, consistently availability. So all of this would make a lot of things possible. But again, human who has been there, who saw it all, had to go deep, line by line, verify it. It's more like a decision support system. It still buys the R&D department a few more coffee breaks, and don't have to worry about if tomorrow morning the entire team says, hey, we are going to join the next unicorn in a different space. So for us, that's a huge challenge. I mean, it was more of about a sustainability challenge. We used to hire them 6 months after, they would be gone. Whatever salary you offer them. Because, hey, we do not want to work in a market which is globally very niche. I want to work in SaaS market, which is a food delivery platform, which is a ride-hailing platform. I want to work in Silicon Valley, out here from Lahore, Islamabad. And we had this, hey, we need people who are passion-driven, who are here for patient safety, who are here to save a few lives from the hundreds of thousands of lives that are gone due to medication errors, due to adverse drug events, and increasingly AMR. antimicrobial resistance. We can also address that as a national regulator. The numbers are bigger than adverse drug events now. Antimicrobial resistance here in lower and middle income countries, people take antibiotics for fun. It's so easy.
Just to manage the time, because we have more than 90 minutes of discussions, and in the chat of the meeting, there is a lot of comments, which is very, very interesting. So I will just have 5 minutes regarding to comment on the chat of the comments in the chat. Then we will open the questions for the audience. Then we can mind this interesting meeting. I think this will be not one meeting. I think this need to be repeated for another interesting topics and discussions. Okay, one of the interesting topics is Mr. Marcel topics. Mr. Marcel comment. He mentions that just one putting a standards, which is a very clear standards regarding the data interoperability and 𝐓𝐫𝐸 file and everything regarding the GCB, GLNs, and GTINs. He mentions that deviation in some countries from the JS1 standards, this is make a customizations in the available solution, and this maybe lead to increasing the cost. So I think this is one of the invaluable comments about regarding the cost, because one of the causes of this cost is regarding deviation from JS1 standards at certain countries because of regulatory. And this is, of course, I know this is the point of the regulations, but this is one of the comments of Mr. Marcel. Another comment from Mr. Saleh is mentioned that, okay, there is a need to implement track and trace. It is a 50-50, but it needs to be like there is a flexibility from the regulation for 2 or 3 years to implement a track and trace till reach the maturity. This is a comment from Mr. Saleh. Another also interesting comment from Mr. Siders regarding the AI. I know Mr. Siders, he is working in DS, regarding the DSA side, USA reporting in USA. He's mentioning that given the volume and complexity of exceptions in the 𝐓𝐫𝐸 file in DSCA, so there is a mismatching between the trading partners. Is currently AI is able to detect and predict the exceptions and can prevent it? Is AI up to now is mature enough to have a practical role in the track and trace operational? And this is, I think, very, very also interesting comment. So I will take your answers on or your comments on these points. If anyone can have like a comment on this.
I'd like to just respond to the last one. So obviously, one of the things, everyone here is a zealot of standards. So we love 𝐕PCIS, we love GS1. In terms of exceptions, in the US, for example, AI is not required to identify exceptions. It can be utilized, but you can identify exceptions without AI. What AI is just gives that efficiency that you might utilize to do some repetitive tasks that you would normally do as a human, but it's not necessary to the exceptions, is my point. The main cause of exceptions in a supply chain is derived from vendor software. Okay, this needs to be understood that when you're building your supply chain, you need to be aware of how your partners are exchanging data. So, for example, if you want to have a pure 𝐕PCIS supply chain, which is healthy and a very good attitude, just like we agree, the international language of business is English. right? And we don't sort of start translating into Japanese and Arabic and it gets lost in translation. So we agree on a standard. So the best way to prevent exceptions is by making sure your supply chain is conformant to standards. If you're interacting with a vendor that uses the proprietary format, they may say we support 𝐕𝐞𝐳𝐈, but they have a proprietary format. That is going to adulterate data. It's going to interfere with the integrity of an 𝐕𝐞𝐳𝐈 supply chain, right? So you need to recognize that the main causal factor of exceptions is vendor software. Okay? There are human errors, absolutely. And the key requirement for building visibility of exceptions is being able to see the files that come in and the files that go out and the files that are received, because then you have a view of all the T2s, for example, and you can identify discrepancies or exceptions. And that's the only real viable way you're going to be able to successfully manage exceptions. But if you look at the root cause of exceptions, you will see they are vendor driven. And that's because of a deviation from standards.
So
sorry,
Justin,
No problem. No problem.
can I quickly pick up on this, Justin? And
Yes.
just
Yeah, of course.
only need a minute because what you're saying, Justin, is absolutely right. So the problem is the software. Okay, so we are also a vendor of software, and sometimes yes, there's challenges. But I mean, this exception topic, I like the question of how AI is going to help. Yes, AI is going to help detect patterns. AI is definitely not needed to resolve exceptions and to manage exceptions, because exceptions can be handled by a rather simple rule-based engine that you put in front of it, right?
Precisely.
So and you know, and yes, as Antares Vision, yes, we have also as part of this big DSCSA rush, we also had to develop solutions that we provided to some companies that were put in front of their actual level 4 systems to handle data discrepancies in the supply chain, just to fix data before it becomes a problem, to clean up some of the, let me say, clean up some of the junk that flows through the supply chain data. So there's solutions there. Is it created because you start managing proprietary file systems apart from GS1? Yes, definitely. Okay, so that's the root cause of the problem. But there's also sometimes issues where you have data outages. So there's a multitude of reasons why data can get corrupted. Okay, but most of the time it's just because I'm converting from a perfectly fine standard to something proprietary and then back to a perfectly fine standard. But I want to make one other comment on GS1, because I'm sure, as most of you are aware, you know, we are very, very strongly working together with GS1 in the markets where we are active, and I truly see the benefit of what they bring to the table, because they have not only harmonized the language of business, they have also established, let me say, more or less centralized systems where we as an industry pretty much have a de facto agreement on the correctness of master data, whether that's the branching database or UDI databases, whatever it may be, right? So this is something that we also need to understand. We don't always need to, you know, cook our own little soup or brew our, you know, so it's let's leverage what is out there already, and that will drive down the cost in our own corporate systems. That will make sure that we all make it much easier if you're expanding into a new regulation. If you already have a harmonized pool of data, then it's much easier just to put a checkbox there and say, okay, next country is going to be XYZ on the list where I'm going to send data. So let's leverage the systems. I'm in 100% favor of GS1. I really like what they're doing, and I think we all need to agree that we have already agreed that this is the de facto standard we're all following.
Yeah, absolutely correct. And I think maybe I didn't include that, and you've hit the nail on the head with the standards of GS1, 𝐕𝐞𝐳𝐈. And I think what we probably could benefit from is giving those entities teeth, right? Giving those entities the ability to make sure the supply chain is conformant, right? Because you've hit the nail on the head. It is conforming to those standards that is the key to success. Also, enforcement and governance is important, but I think where we really can move forward with those standards bodies is by enabling them to ensure that the software being used is being used properly. It's not adulterating. Because you could say, oh yeah, well, you know, I use GS1, yeah, but then somewhere in the mechanics things change and there's no real governance or no real, and that's why I think those standards bodies could step up with support from the industry and customers to start ensuring and validating systems that are used claiming to be GS1 compliant. Which evidently are not, you know, in some cases.
Not wishing to disagree with you, Justin, but yes, I agree to a certain point. I would not agree that giving these bodies like the judge, jury, and executioner role. You know?
No, I mean in terms of so in terms of if you've got a standard, right? How do you make sure that standard is being used? There's, you know, for me, GS1 do a great job of saying what you do, but no one actually checks if people are doing that. Yeah. And GS1 are the only, you know, body that are in a position to say, well, this is the criteria, unless of course GS1 start giving out accreditations to people who can go and verify people's operations and do due diligence and audit a person's supply chain to see if there's conformance. But that doesn't exist at the moment in the supply chain. Right. And this is where the slip comes in, because there's an opportunity for someone to deliver a solution that may introduce those errors. And because there's no external governance, there's no external review, it's kind of decided, it becomes the responsibility of the customer, which is not a bad thing, but there's a level of maturity and capability I think we still need to achieve.
Yeah, just if I could just add before raising an apology, most of the issues what we have historically seen are bad data in, bad data out type issues. Hierarchy is not correct, missing data, not necessarily driven directly by the specific vendor's solution.
No, but the systems, so I would disagree with that point, because I've seen how systems work. So for example, I could put a GLN into a system and the system will automatically create the SGLN. I could put a GTIN into a system and the system will tell me the GCP is incorrect, the check digit's incorrect, right? It will police the data, it will govern the data. I can go into other systems, no names mentioned, and I can enter whatever junk I want, right? And then that junk goes into the supply chain. So it is a system design thing, without a doubt, and it is governance that
disagree. I would disagree, because the reason I say, and it came back to an earlier point, I understand what you're saying, but these systems are not necessarily the systems of record for master data, for example. So if you're transferring from your master data system to the serialization system, and your master data system has a junk GTIN, for example, right, as you say, right, it's a different question. You're not solving the right problem. You're solving your problem is in your source system. So that's where I was. Yeah, but I get your point, but I would fix it back as where it should be fixed.
But the thing is, a customer might not know exactly what they want or what they need, right? So having a solution that kind of fills in those gaps is an advantage, right? My point is that some systems let you put in bad data. Some systems don't. And I would say that those systems that don't are more likely to have less issues in the supply chain than systems that say, yeah, you know, I'm not going to govern that, or systems that have updates that change things and then connections don't work later, which is common with some vendors, where you can make exchanges for 3 years and all of a sudden they do a patch update and your exchange is stopped. You can't send the data as an error saying company prefix not included, and it's like, well, hang on, you were accepting it for 3 years and all of a sudden you stopped accepting it. So I don't agree. I think that vendors, or rather, sorry, not vendors, I don't want to point the finger at vendors, but software solutions and how they're architected is key to the quality of the data in the supply chain. And unfortunately, there are systems out there that just let you put in junk. They don't police what you're entering.
Justin and Mr. Patrick, I think it's very interesting to have a different point of view, but at the end of the day and before the end of the session, I think we are in around 13 years only industry. This is a very, very, it's like a 16 years child. He's keep understanding, keep learning. So yes, something still missing in the industry to close the gap. Still the gap, we have a gap in the whole pharmaceutical supply chain systems, standards, maybe standards in some countries and deviation from standards, as Mr. Marcel mentioned. So it's still a baby. He's getting experience. He's getting more knowledge, and I think we will see more in the next years. We are not now in from 7 or 8 years before. So we are getting more experience, more adaptation, more maturity from customer side, from vendor side, from softwares even side. Last comment from Mr. Rizwan. Then we'll have open discussions from open questions for 5 minutes from the audience. Then we can end the meeting. Mr. Rizwan.
Yes, I would like to respond to one of the questions from Mr. Saleh Khan, who I believe is one of the markets that we operate in. So yes, totally agree that all the manufacturers, they have what's in it for them, for sure, to comply. But only when distributors and point of sale start getting on board and start doing it. So in the market that we operate in, there's also a regulatory innovation needed. The manufacturing is done by the federal national system. They want data in their system, but all the distributors and point of sale, they're regulated by a provincial different regulatory authority. And both of those authorities, are they on the same page? And do they want the same aligned expectations in data acceptance? We don't know as yet. So one thing is that compliance, Swale mentioned that there should be leniency and maturity. So I believe in that compliance deadline should not be calendar dates. They should be supported by readiness milestones. Manufacturer is ready. Is the distributor ready? Is the point of sale ready? Because my ROI is going to come when my product is going to be scanned at point of sale by regulation, mandatory, not as an incentive. Only then my brand protection happens. Only then I get all the visibility, and also the healthcare system, the patient safety, all the advantages that the health ministry has thought about it. Only then they can harness the benefits. So one thing is that ideal is that readiness milestones, not calendar dates. Whatever happens first, manufacturer will be more than happy to comply earlier than a calendar date if the future, if the readiness milestones have already been achieved, because he starts getting the benefits. It's otherwise right there. Manufacturers in our part of the world would love to invest and do track and trace, even if there's no regulation. Only if point of sale starts scanning mandatory. They do not need regulation because there's double-digit percentage of counterfeiting here. So then comes this part of the solution provider, that the platform that is compliant today, the platform has to be modular architecture for sure. Regulatory change will always happen. We have to see, so customization are not an exception. They have to happen. So a platform that is compliant today, but difficult to change tomorrow, creates a new form of regulatory risk. Costs, unable to do at all. So seasoned, so when like there is a concept of what right track and trace partner to select. Most importantly is like you select what medicines you're gonna take for your father, for your daughter, for your son. There has to be R&D behind it. It's not has to be the cheapest one out there. The R&D behind it might as well be cheaper even, because they have economy of scale, because they do all of the R&D and they're sustainable. So best is that a credible vendor should not only explain what will work, but they should be honest that what may go wrong. What is possible, what's not possible. We have to be honest in our strategy, even at the cost of not getting the order.
Yes.
Yeah, I've seen that happen. I had a few comments from my recent negotiation with someone say, do you actually want to sell your product? Because no one can be as brutally honest.
Yes.
It's building trust, isn't it? It's building trust.
Yes. this is very interesting discussion indeed. 2 hours of continuous discussion. I think if the session is more than hours, it will start to be continued. Okay. If anyone from the audience have any question, he can please raise his hand, and we can start receiving questions from the audience. Okay. Okay, this is a good sign. No questions from the audience. I think they put most of the questions to the chat. Okay. Maybe in 2 minutes to receive last statement from each one of you before thanking you for your valuable time today. Mr. Jerome.
Well, thank you for giving us the opportunity to have this very interesting discussion today. And it's interesting to hear the different points from different parts of the world, from from Rizwan, from Sebastian, and from Patrick, and also yourself, and about the different viewpoints and how traceability versus verification systems are actually working and the issues. And I think we do see some of the common issues. We do see the common issues around data quality, compliance with standards, and if you don't get the compliance with the standards, you don't get the necessary interoperability of the data, and that's going to cost different players in the supply chain effort, time, and ultimately money to resolve those issues, either in having to make changes to their systems, as has been suggested on the chat, implement AI or other tools to enable you to fix and resolve those issues. So it's really important to get the data right, make sure you're complying with the standards and get that interoperability, then the information will flow. But it's also important to understand what you're going to do and how you're going to manage the exceptions when you do inevitably get them, because you will get them, and particularly in the early days, you will get a lot when you're setting up systems. The other thing to recognize also, and I think Rizwan just commented it a couple of minutes ago, is the regulators are not consistent in their approach about how they're managing, particularly if you have different regulators for different parts of the supply chain. You have a different regulator for hospitals to manufacturers, then you will get different approaches to how the regulator works. And that is something that we've struggled with in a lot of countries in Europe, particularly the bigger ones, where it is very inconsistent. But overall, I think it's been a really interesting discussion, and thank you everyone else for your inputs. Has been really useful.
Thank you, Mr. Jerome, for your invaluable time today. Mr. Sebastian.
So yeah, just a very quick closing statement. So I think we are all very much aligned. Ahmad, I think you mentioned that this industry is only like in its infancy. So I think you spoke about a young child. At the end of the day, someone else said, I think it was Justin, that said that today the people that are growing up, they are digital first. So this industry, this niche that we're working on, should really also be considered digital first. That's what it is. So we have to be careful that we don't overextend ourselves over pitching AI to customers without really understanding how we can reap the benefits out of it for the whole industry, for the whole supply chain. And then we also need to understand that it's our role, our joint role, from vendor side, from regulator side, to interact, to be in exchange with each other, because the regulators understand what they want to solve for the public health. But we as industry, I will say, we've seen most of it. We've seen the challenges. We understand where it works. We understand where it won't work without everyone really participating and using the same standards. So let's continue to advocate for what I think we all can agree is the right thing.
Thank you, Mr. Sebastian. Mr. Patrick.
Yeah, one moment. Yeah, thanks for the time, and who's been a great discussion. We have disagreed on certain things, but that's fair. All's fair in love and war. Justin and I can't help it if I'm always right, so apologies for that in advance. But this forum, I think, could be a very vital part to play. I mean, for people to bounce ideas and contact. So I hope you will continue doing this, and if I can help in the future, great. I'm just I like to give my opinions, and we should be clear on what we're trying to solve, and reason your points about vendors being honest, that's really critical. Guys, apologies, I need to jump now to my next call, so but thank you.
Thank you. So Rizwan?
Yeah, so I would take what Patrick just mentioned, that the best customer-vendor relation is not the one without difficult conversation. It is one where difficult conversations happen early. The goal is not merely to connect stakeholders to a platform, but it is to create a trustworthy ecosystem around every medicine. If that happens, everybody benefits.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rizwan. Justin, closing statement.
Oh, thank you, Ahmed, for sorting this out, organizing this. This has been brilliant. I think David Holland described it best. It's been a session of eclectic views. I think the most important thing.
I like Mr. David's expressions. It's very, very interesting. From the comments, from any webinar or any. Hi, Mr. David. How are you? From any comment for him, I like his expressions to describe things.
For sure. So, and really, I think one size doesn't fit all, right? I have an opinion. We all have different opinions, and the world isn't made up of one template. We're all very different. This is a great forum for people to identify and relate with things that they can move forward in terms of their serialization. So I think this is fantastic that we don't have a single drive and we do have disagreements, because I think that's natural and that's normal. And
Yes.
it's absolutely the right direction for us to move forward.
This is the main objective for preventing different point of view, to have a different discussion and different and see the things from different point of view. Okay, I'd like to thank you all for your invaluable time today, Mr. Jerome, Mr. Sebastian, Mr. Patrick, Mr. Rizwan, Justin, and all of the audience. Thank you for your invaluable time today. This is one of the sessions of Trace Hub towards increasing the awareness regarding the track and trace globally and for each market specific. And I hope we achieve this today, and I hope we repeat such sessions in the near future. Thank you for your valuable time today, and have a nice day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.